The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the RMI Mobility Accelerator Faculty Orientation. Thank you all so much for being here this afternoon and also for volunteering your time and effort in conjunction with this event. We're very excited about the slate of teams that we have coming to the Accelerator next week and really look forward to diving into the work with all of you and the participants. Right now, you are all muted, but we're going to have the opportunity for questions at the end. And also, a little ways into the presentation, I'm going to ask each of you who's online to please go ahead and introduce yourself. So to kick things off, my name is E.J. Clark-McCook, and I lead the Mobility Innovation Lab here at RMI. I'd like to start by introducing the RMI team that's going to be with us next week up in Basalt, Colorado. Britta Gross has recently joined RMI as the new managing director of the mobility practice, and along with senior fellow Hutch Hutchinson, they will be acting as advisors and also at times as faculty members as well. Myself and my colleague Roy Torbert, who you'll hear from in a minute, are the holders of the whole, so we will be the lead facilitators throughout the 4 days up in Basalt. Barb Knapp is in charge of logistics, and I know you all have been getting a number of communications from her up to this point, and please do stay in touch with her with regards to anything associated with travel, lodging, or food. And finally, Jim Roman, a new senior associate with our mobility team here, is going to be handling faculty dispatch. So he's going to make sure that all of you know where to go, are being brought into the right conversations with the teams at the right moments, and generally making sure that you have a good stay with us up in Basalt. Now, each team also has an RMI facilitator. There are 7 teams on the roster, and we'll talk a little bit more about them coming up. But just to walk through the facilitators quickly, Caitlin Bunker will be facilitating the Hawaii team, Emily Goldfield, the team from Moville, Ben Holland and Chuck Ray, the team from the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, Michael Liebman, Charge EVC, Jesse Lund, City of Boulder, Mark Salberg, Roaring Fork Transportation Authority, and finally, Anthony Teixeira with Vote Solar. So what is the Mobility Innovation Lab? And in fact, what is an RMI Project Accelerator in general? These events are really designed towards tackling problems that are complex, involve a diversity of stakeholders who likely have different points of view or in fact even different worldviews. They are designed to go after problems where the answer does not simply lie in an Excel spreadsheet or another analysis tool, but rather requires creative, multi-stakeholder problem solving in order to unlock transformational solutions. So the overall design of the event is really based on first trying to achieve a common understanding of what the problem even is, and then ultimately a common understanding of where the destination is, so that everyone is moving in the same direction and paddling together. The the Project Accelerator, therefore, is not like any other conference or meeting that you've ever been to. It is an intense 4-day experience of working sessions and very active participation on the part of everyone who is involved, so that we can really begin to unlock some of these creative, transformative solutions that can move these project teams forward. This particular accelerator coming up next week is focused first and foremost on accelerating critical projects in the United States that have the potential not only for significant impact on their own, but also for the benefit of the community and industry as a whole. But secondly, and equally importantly, we're really focused on building the capacity within the individuals and the teams in order to ensure that they're able to continue to make substantive progress after the accelerator when they go back home. For the teams themselves, first and foremost, we want to help them understand what are the opportunities and challenges and understand how the different stakeholders on the team may perceive those differently. Secondly, we want to help increase the capacity of those team members for creative and participative problem solving in order to come up with systematic approaches. And finally, we want to help provide an extensive network of support from team members themselves, other participants, and in fact, the faculty members as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Roy to talk through more about how the accelerator process works.
Thanks, EJ, and hello, everyone. Again, my name is Roy Torbert. Maybe I'll just outline a little sort of how and why this meeting is different. The design of the accelerator means that we are intentionally structured and focused throughout the event. And really the focus of activity is all around the project. The team is there because they share a common project or goal. And the entire design of the event is how to focus on those teams and those projects to drive them forward. In service of that, we need a pretty rich learning experience. We have to bring the deep content that many of the RMI staff and participants will have, as well as what the faculty bring on the content side. But we also want more of the process tools and trainings so that you can think about these problems in a different and more innovative way. And lastly, this often emerges from the 4 days locked up together, is sort of the new alliances to know, I never knew I could get support on my project from this obscure corner. That is exactly what often emerges from these accelerators. So we've really brought all this together into what we think of as a pretty unique environment, piloted by the mobility team last year and done now for 5 years by our electricity practice here at RMI. And that's really what you'll be experiencing in the time together in Basalt. As EJ said, not every problem or project is particularly conducive to this sort of approach, but the ones that are typically have these 3 types of complexity. And they are those really complex problems that have social or stakeholder complexity, meaning it isn't one single individual or group that can make the difference in this project. And second, you've got dynamic complexity, meaning the causes and the effects in this system are far apart in time or in space. And because of that, it's not easy to sort of see the impact of the immediate actions of any single stakeholder. And lastly, there's generative complexity. And that means that you can't sort of reach to the bank of knowledge and say, find me the solution that worked for this specific problem before, and we will copy and paste it. The future in this is unfamiliar and undetermined, and you don't have a roadmap. So when those 3 types of complexity come together, and we've very carefully curated the teams at this accelerator, what you need is a different way of working together, a way that emphasizes the diversity and the strength of difference, and opens the mind space for new solutions to emerge. And there's a few things we're doing intentionally to help create that environment. The first is we're bringing sort of the RMI whole systems processes and approaches. We'll be using Amory and some of his time early in the event to help encourage that. We'll also have, as much as we can, really pretty diverse and representative participation within the teams, and then from the faculty bringing additional perspective into the group selectively. And lastly, while we're doing all this work very hyper-focused on the problem and the team, we are doing some capacity building. We have the dedicated topic training with faculty. We have intentional time for cross-collaboration and cross-learning between teams. And that's all in service of sending everyone home feeling like they learned a lot and are newly empowered for the challenges they face at work.
So now we'd like to just quickly run through each of the teams with a brief overview. At the end of this slide deck, which we'll provide to you, it contains more details of each of the teams. But in brief, Boulder, the city of Boulder is coming with a team that's focused on trying to design the financial and operational model for a shared depot that would support electric buses for the school district, the university, and a local public transit route. Both Solar and SIA are bringing a project that's really looking at how to bridge the urban-rural divide and bring the benefits of the electrification revolution to rural communities. In particular, they have a number of rural co-ops as part of the team that are really trying to understand where do they fit in to this overall picture. The Roaring Fork Transportation Authority is just a few weeks away from receiving their first batch of electric buses, and they've asked themselves the question, what experiments do we need to conduct? What hypotheses do we need to test with this first round of buses in order to really facilitate scaling the electric fleet going forward? Charge EVC from Trenton, New Jersey wants to figure out how to provide better access to clean mobility options for disadvantaged communities, in particular as it relates to access to jobs. Ulupono Initiative is bringing the state and county of Hawaii, who wish to electrify their fleet across the islands in Hawaii. Movil out of Portland is seeking to advance the idea of a universal fare standard so that you could, for example, get off a plane anywhere in the US or even the world, and with a seamless experience, book and pay for your public transit fare. And finally, the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project is bringing forward a team focused on electrifying transportation network companies in the Denver metro area. So now I would like to take a moment to introduce all the faculty to each other. I think we have on the line Becky Knox, John Fox Rubin, and Nick Nigro. So I'm going to start at the top of the list. Nick, you're unmuted. If you could just give everybody a quick introduction, please. Oh, sorry, Nick. We're having...
Unmute Nick. Sorry.
There we are.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Nick Nigro with Atlas Public Policy. I'm excited to be a part of this project. I really appreciate the opportunity to be faculty here. I was sad I couldn't make it last year, so glad I can do it this year. And yeah, I'm looking forward to participating. I know Becky. I don't think Scott we've met before. Did you say, is it John on the line or Scott?
John is on the line along with Becky.
Oh, John. Well, I don't think we've met either, John. But I'm looking forward to meeting you. I've been working in transportation electrification for about 10 years. First five or so were at the Pew Center on Global Climate Change, now called C2ES. And since then, I've been at my company, Atlas Public Policy. Our mission is to bring data and tech to the policymaking field. We have a product that's used quite widely by folks at RMI, elsewhere in the transportation electrification community, called EV Hub, that really informs a lot of our knowledge and strategy on electrification. So looking forward to sharing my perspective.
Thanks so much, Nick. So now we'll go down to Becky Knox, please. Looks like perhaps Becky is not connected to audio. All right. Well, Becky, if you don't mind, I'll take a crack at it for you. Becky is a senior leader with the Edison Electric Institute. She leads which is an organization of over 100 investor-owned utilities throughout the country. They represent a significant portion of Americans in terms of power supply, and also all 50 states throughout the country. Becky, in particular, leads the executive working group at EEI that's focused on transportation electrification. And so with that, let me turn it over, please, to John. 1 second, John, while we get you unmuted. All right, go ahead, please.
Hey, thank you. Yes, John Fox Rubin. You can't tell much by my current organization called Fox Rubin Limited, but my background is primarily integrated engineering in the automotive space. Started a company that was a spin-off from Rocky Mountain Institute in 1996 called Hypercar. We had an audacious goal of making a 100-mile-per-gallon zero-emission vehicle by 2003 and bring it to market in California. There was a mandate back then for such vehicles. The mandate was relaxed, and we failed to bring a vehicle to market, but we ended up pivoting into advanced materials, a company that ended up being called FiberForge that I ran for 10 to 14 years, depending how you do the math. And I've been consulting for a while on a variety of energy and efficiency programs like this.
Thank you so much, John. And then I'll take a moment to also introduce the other two folks who were not able to join us today. The first is Holmes Hummel. Holmes is the founder and executive director of Clean Energy Works, which has driven forward and developed the idea of pay-as-you-save financing, learning from building efficiency and how that is financed and applying it to electric buses, looking at ways to help unlock utility capital in order to accelerate the electric bus transformation. Prior to that, she held a senior position within the U.S. Department of Energy under the Obama administration. And then finally, we have Scott Kubley, who was in senior positions at both the Chicago and Washington, D.C. Departments of Transportation, before ultimately leading the Seattle Department of Transportation. He also served as the head of global public policy for Lime Bike, which is a dockless bike and scooter share company, and was at Seattle during the introduction of dockless when Seattle became the first city to officially wrap policy around that mode of transportation. So those are the 5 faculty members who are going to be participating here, and we'll have complete bios available for everyone on the website and in your packet when you register next Monday afternoon. So now to just give a quick overview of the agenda. The meeting begins at lunch on Monday and concludes around lunchtime on Thursday. We will be organizing shuttles from the Aspen Airport over to our office in Basalt. And so again, you should have received an email from Barb yesterday evening or this morning requesting your flight information. Please do be sure to provide that, because that will help us make sure that there's actually a shuttle there to get you where you need to be. We'll kick off with lunch and then move into introductions and really setting the space for our next 4 days of work together. That's the focus of day 1. We'll wrap up on the early side so that folks can get down to the hotel and get checked in. We'll provide transportation down there from the office. And then at 6 p.m. have reception in the hotel lobby before moving across the street to dinner. On Tuesday and for the next 3 mornings, we have breakfast beginning at 7 a.m. and we do ask that the faculty join a couple of the RMI staff together for breakfast at 7:15. It's an opportunity to check in with how things are going for you, any observations or concerns you have about the teams, and also for us to potentially preview specific needs or interjection points that we're foreseeing in the day to come for the faculty. Tuesday morning, then, we'll kick off at the office at 8:30, and we're going to have a presentation from Amory Lovins, our founder, which we're very excited about, before moving into a series of team times that are really about coming back to that common understanding of the problem that I described earlier, and getting the teams all aligned in the same direction. We'll close around 5:30. Head back to the hotel with some free time and an optional cocktail hour before heading over to dinner at 7. On Thursday, a similar overall structure. On Wednesday, a similar overall structure where we'll have faculty breakfast at 7:15 before heading over to the office. Wednesday is really about getting into the assumptions that folks might be holding and surfacing those, and then beginning to look at potential solutions to the problems and really prototyping and iterating them throughout the day. We will also have and I realize I should have backed up there. On Tuesday and on Wednesday, we'll have our faculty learning sessions. This is an opportunity for each of you to host a conversation with participants who opt in to your talk. So there'll be 3 or 4 of those on Tuesday and 3 or 4 on Wednesday. If you've not submitted your topic to Barb yet, please do send that along so that we can get that queued up into the roster. And then on Thursday, this is our final day that's really geared towards crystallizing next steps, commitments, and offers of support. And it culminates in a large final presentation that is of a pretty dynamic setup, and usually a highlight really of the event as a whole. We'll have it wrapped up by 12:15 when lunch will be provided, and you're welcome to eat there at the office and continue to network, or if you need to get going, it will be a box lunch, and so you can head out the door. We will be providing shuttle service also up to the airport on Thursday afternoon, and again, with your logistics information, we'll be able to make sure that we have things scheduled properly. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Roy to talk a little more about what it means to be faculty.
Yeah, and EJ, I might just add an additional bit of color to the agenda. Can you go back just one slide?
Mm-hmm. And then Nick.
So there's, oh great. Yes, we will circle around to the Tuesday afternoon talks, which I think was Nick's question. The theory behind the design of this overall agenda generally conforms to, if anyone's familiar with Otto Schormer at MIT or other sorts of collaborative process design approaches. It's not very complicated, but we typically refer to it as diverge, emerge, converge. And in short, the diverge phase is where everyone opens up their mind to new ideas. This can often be seen in sort of a brainstorming session that you might typically do. We're also going to have people question some of their underlying assumptions and work through, with a very dedicated session, how they view the system in which they're operating. By Tuesday, we begin to move into this second phase of emerge. This is what we think of as the messy phase, right? There's a lot of options out there on the table for the teams. They're starting to think through, how do we consider the pros and cons or prioritize? There's a lot of complexity that they're grappling with. And honestly, the instinct here, which some faculty might see when you go around to these tables, is some discomfort with this ambiguity, to feel like, well, we don't really know what we're going to be doing, and that makes us all a little uncomfortable. Wouldn't this be great if we could just narrow things down or close off some of these avenues? And the facilitators are going to be intentionally guiding their teams to embrace some of that discomfort, because that's where a lot of the really good, best pressure-tested ideas emerge from. So really, Tuesday, well into Wednesday afternoon, we're going to be in that uncomfortable emerge phase. The divergence that we sort of really emphasized early on lays the groundwork for a strong emergence. And then if the teams are able to really prioritize their solutions, it makes the convergence, the last part of this process, really actually quite fast. The ability to say, okay, then we're going to do these 3 things, and these 2 people on the team are responsible for them, and they'll report back in a month's time or what have you. That sort of identification of next steps and roles can feel quite natural and rapid. And some teams delay this all the way till Thursday morning, although most will start sketching it up Wednesday afternoon. So that's I'd say a heads up to all the faculty to be aware that the team might be in a particular mode at the moment when you're being asked to step into their group. And I think the strong guidance, and we can get into this on the next slide, is to be sensitive to where the facilitator is trying to take that group at the moment. So really take your guidance from each of the team facilitators as you enter the team space. So what does it mean to be really great faculty in the context of an event like this? So to Nick's question, the learning sessions are a time for you to share an experience with all the participants. They will get the sort of list of what's being presented and then sign up, essentially, just walk to the room that they want to hear from, and have a pretty open bit of presentation and learning in that. It's an hour, right?
45 minutes.
45 minutes, right. So preparing for that, and I think EJ might say a little more about where we are on the topics for that, will be critical. And then secondly, in and around the event, in addition to that learning session, you're going to be providing coaching to teams. And I'll say a bit more about what coaching really means. But there's two ways this can happen. One is dispatched, and Jim will be controlling the faculty dispatch, which is where a facilitator says, ooh, we really seem stuck and we're struggling with the sort of charging infrastructure and how city governments think about it. And we could use a perspective, that's just one example, right? We'd use that perspective to crack that nut. And so they might reach out to Jim at that moment and say, we'd love to get, John at this moment to help us think this through. Can you send him to our group in 10 minutes time? And Jim will facilitate that and track down the faculty to make that happen. There's also times in the agenda where you'll be floating and being able to feel like, oh, is it natural for me to join a part of this team? Make sure that you're not sort of interjecting at a moment where the team feels like, oh, all we really need is like to focus and we don't want any external distractions. So that's a bit based on your judgment. And the last thing that's critical is an opening on Monday where you introduce yourselves pretty clearly to say, this is what innovation topics I'm really excited about. People can talk to me about that. And then what's the personal or work experience that I bring to bear? And that will help really create that credibility for the participants when you enter their group at any number of times in the coming 3 days. I will, throughout this event, be keeping strict track of time. So when we say 1 to 2 minutes, I'm going to cut you off right at about 2 minutes. And I'll be doing this for everyone, and I'll be really consistent. So don't feel like you're being discriminated against, but it's my job to make sure that we don't have the inevitable bleed over on time. EJ, you want to add? We could talk coaching mindset and then talk about the learning sessions if that works.
Sure.
So just a coaching mindset, I think many folks would already know this, but we're asking you to show up. We're asking you to show up as sort of as a coach first and foremost. And that means the team, as I mentioned, might be struggling through some tough topics. And you should think of yourself as, how do I get them to realize their own answers and insights? And that means often not showing up and saying, oh, yeah, I've got the answer to this. Here it is. First thing you should do is listen, sort of try and figure out where the team is at the moment, and often lean far more heavily on asking questions. So if you're sensing they maybe are missing a key stakeholder perspective, you'd ask them. You say, have you thought about which stakeholder perspectives are not being reflected in this set of priorities you've sketched out here in this moment? That's just one example, right? So using questions that let them think through what they might be missing or what they need to add to the dialogue is, I think, your primary tool. And lastly, your presence, your sort of enthusiasm and optimism is a really powerful signal to all the participants. And we're going to be building a space that people feel comfortable to make their own sort of inadequacies on the content or the fact that they're struggling with this problem and they don't have the answer. We want the space for people to make that transparent and feel comfortable exposing some of that. And you sort of being positive and constructive in embracing that, I think, will be really quite powerful. I can hit now just some basic logistics stuff. If you haven't already registered through Eventbrite, please do. Barb is tracking all the registrations to that. Expect long and pretty immersive days. So casual dress, shoes that you don't mind being in for a while. And there will be sort of migration between rooms inside the building, all climate controlled, and some outdoor activities, which are going to be happening in some relatively warm weather at high altitude in Colorado. So I'd say be prepared for that. It's nice to have a relatively light shirt if you're going to be outside, but if you're going to be out in the evening, perhaps taking a walk with some participants, it might be also a light jacket depending on the day. Breakfasts are one of those key times where you can be flexible, self-organized discussion with participants. If a participant finds you during a break and it's only 10 minutes, like, I'd love to follow up on this. Breakfasts are a great time to offer the deeper, more in-depth time. Any travel and logistics questions will go to Barb. That's her email there. So she's really coordinated fully on the event, the transportation between all the venues, and can handle any of your questions there. As mentioned, Jim will be doing faculty dispatch during all of the sessions in the Accelerator. And so when he tracks you down and says, the Movable team could really use you on this topic, I think just do your best to jump right into it.
Okay. Thanks so much, Roy. So now we're going to open it up to questions. I see Nick already has one here. Again, looking for some more details around the learning sessions and some examples. So I think the learning sessions typically fall into one of two categories. It could be something that is very topical. So, for example, financing models for electric vehicles, or how EV charging infrastructure interacts with the grid, something of that nature. Or, it could also be something more tangentially or process related. So, for example, Leah Goccioni, one of our principals in the electricity team, who is also a naval officer, has given a learning session on military decision making. I think I saw from John Fox Rubin that he'll be giving a talk on design thinking, drawing inspiration from Leonardo da Vinci. So I think it's an opportunity to either dive more deeply into a content area that is germane to this particular event, or an opportunity to go off on a little bit of a tangent and perhaps expand folks' thinking and give a little bit of a mental reprieve to the content area. It's really up to your choice. Typically, they begin with 5 to 10 minutes of remarks from the faculty member, no slides. And then at that point goes into a conversation on the topic between the participants and the faculty member. So definitely very casual and light, very little preparation. The idea is something that you're keen to talk about and want to share with the participants. Nick, does that help answer your question?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, it does. I'm just still sorry. This is my first time doing it, and up until what you just said, it wasn't entirely clear to me on what I needed to do in advance. I don't really have a topic in the bag, so to speak, that could mention Leonardo da Vinci or whoever. So I'm just looking for a little guidance to make sure that I'm not wasting people's time. And is this conversation going to be in front of how many people are going to attend this talk, just to give me an idea?
Yeah, so there's 2 rounds of learning sessions.
Okay.
One's Tuesday, one's Wednesday, and there'll be between 3 and 4 sessions in each. So whenever you go, there'll be 2 or 3 other folks also giving a talk in parallel. And so what we typically do is right before you'll get up and give the 15-second pitch on what you're going to talk about, and then folks will self-select into the group that they want to join.
Okay.
So it's a little hard to say. There's somewhere around, what are we at, Barb? 65, 66 people total.
Okay.
So somewhere
it could be only like 5 or 10 people in my talk.
Could be.
It could be intimate.
It could be intimate.
It could be. Yeah.
It could be a bestseller.
We'll see. Okay, that helps. And there's no backdrop. I'm not going to have a handout. I'm not going to have any slides. So it's going to be something that I can manage, kind of, with just words, essentially. Is that right?
Exactly. The setting, it'll depend on how big the group is. We have some casual settings for the smaller groups that it's like a circle of couches and comfortable chairs. If a large group coalesces, we'll leverage outdoor space under a tent, but definitely not a stage, not a screen, nothing like that.
Yeah, I'd say we're gonna encourage, no matter the size of the group, to try and form a circle.
Yeah,
that's very much the sort of discussion environment we're encouraging there.
Okay.
And that, on all the faculty, if someone shows up a couple minutes late or they have to go to the restroom and come back, and some people might want to sit outside the circle, and you're just going to invite them to say, oh yeah, we're just having a discussion on this topic, please come sit in one of the chairs in the circle.
Okay,
that really helps.
I got some ideas.
That it's not so much like the top down, I'm delivering knowledge, but here I'm framing up a topic that I bring some expertise on, and then we're going to have a discussion. And some of that might be me as the faculty answering your questions. A good bit might be the questions sparking other insights from other people around the circle and getting deeper into this topic. And I think that's sort of non-linear. What what EJ was pointing out, right? People might ask, like, oh, what does decision making in the Navy really have to do with my work with electric buses? But there's a really powerful way that you can connect different disciplines, right? To what I think is
Sure.
almost always the question that these participants are holding at the moment, which is, how do we work together to make change in a complex environment?
Mm-hmm.
And if that, that's the broad question, and then there's a multitude of ways you could get at that question, and really, I think we'll find high appetite from your participants to go with it, even if it doesn't seem like it's, they might show up being like, I'm here just to talk about my bus and my chassis width and my battery capacity, and then it doesn't take much, given the way the event is going, to get them to sort of expand their frame of reference and say, oh, that's interesting. I never thought how these could connect.
Right. Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thanks a lot.
Great. Any other questions from folks? Looks like we have a couple up here. Let's see. Since it's about helping people realize they're smart and creative and support getting them.
I think there's a message above.
Oh,
He
yeah.
said he'd like to do it Tuesday.
Okay. Sure, no problem, John. We can slot you in on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the group at the moment? And if not, obviously, you can feel free to reach out as something might come up. We'll make sure to provide you with this slide deck so that you have this information for reference. And again, the more detailed descriptions of the teams will be at the end. And if no one else has anything else, then thank you very much. And we all look forward very much to seeing you next Monday up in Basalt, Colorado.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.